Today we're going to talk about oxidative color versus direct dye color, all terms that we've heard in cosmetology school. Jen, when coloring hair, what is your biggest fear? I'm just in the lab, so I don't get to see what real life application is like. I can only see it on hair swatches. So what's it like for you to be in the salon and color hair?
I think that's a great question, and like myself and other hairdressers behind the chair, we probably feel the most unsettled when we have a new guest come in because we haven't had that history to be able to determine what that hair is going to do. It's just like anything, it's like, and when you're in a relationship, you kind of know the person a little better, but you know, when you're on your first date, you don't know, and it's exactly what it's like behind the chair. For me, having great coverage and just making sure that I'm mixing the correct formula with my developer and getting that grade to cover 100% so they leave happy and they come back for a return guest.
Yeah, that's the fear of permanent hair color, is it takes time to develop when you squeeze the color out of the tube. If it's permanent oxidative hair color, the dyes are not in their reacted state. They haven't oxidized with the hydrogen peroxide developer, so you don't know what they look like. You have to wait that full 30 minutes, 45 minutes. But when you're coloring hair with direct dyes, Pop XG is an example of a Paul Mitchell semi-permanent color that uses direct dye technology. You see what you get right out of the tube. Purple is purple, orange is orange. And you're right, the dyes do live in a different place on the hair, depending on the hair chemistry, because dyes are chemical molecules and they're attracted to certain things on some people and not on others. Everyone has a unique hair chemistry, but I think when you understand the difference between the two and why you're getting what you're getting, it'll all make sense.
I appreciate that. I think that will answer a lot of questions for colorists and let them understand a little bit more of what we're working with every day. I know that just understanding what we discussed in previous episodes with structure and bonds and what's really living in the hair has helped me become a better colorist. And understanding how to formulate it correctly for my guests is always great. I think that's a big question that I get as a colorist all the time, is what I am mixing in the bowl doesn't always look the same right away, and they get a little nervous or rinse it too soon, or even sometimes throw their formula away when really it was fine. It just was oxidizing a certain way. Val, how will I know as a colorist when I'm using a direct dye or an oxidative dye?
So a good rule of thumb is if you're using hydrogen peroxide developer or processing solution, you are using an oxidative dye. It may have direct dyes in it, but it's primarily an oxidative dye system. If you are not using hydrogen peroxide developer, or you can directly see a color as well with the hair colorant right out of the tube, you're probably using a direct dye system.
So for Inkworks, for example, I am from bottle to bowl to hair. I'm not mixing anything. But for the Demi or the Color XG, for instance, I have to have my developer or my processing liquid.
Exactly. And another good clue with Inkworks is you can see right through the packaging. It's pink, it's red, it's blue, it's yellow. It's a direct dye.
Perfect. So Val, tell me what the differences are between oxidative dye and direct dye.
I think it would be better to show you what I'm talking about when I'm speaking about direct dyes and oxidative dye comparisons, if we can actually see it in person.
Ooh, we're doing an experiment?
Yeah, let's go to my lab. All right.
Val, this is so exciting. I love being in the lab. I love the gear. So explain what we're doing.
So we're going to look at the differences between oxidative hair dyes and direct hair dyes, and the best way to do that is just in solutions of clear and colorless water so that we can see the whole reaction processing as we go.
Fun.
We're going to first do oxidative dyes, and I have my beaker ready to go. So as we can see, the oxidative dyes go in.
Fancy.
It'll take a couple minutes for them to dissolve. It's virtually colorless. I do have to add some ammonia in here, which will help facilitate the oxidative dye reaction when we're ready. Okay, so now I think our dyes are dissolved. I'm going to go ahead and turn this off. We'll set this beaker over to the side, and now we can talk direct dyes.
Okay.
So again, this is just water, and we're dropping our stirrer in because we need to dissolve everything. We're going to turn on the stirrer. All right, so with direct dyes, again, what you see is what we get. We don't have to wait for a chemical reaction to occur for anything to happen.
So we can just see the actual color come to life.
Exactly. And so we're just going to drop a little in. Direct dyes are also very potent.
Oh, wow.
Look at that.
That was such a small amount.
It's a very tiny amount. So what you see is what you get. So when we're ready to dye the hair color, onto the hair, we're actually going to see a blue end result. And we'll see what we get with the oxidative system. It's an unknown until the reaction's done happening. All right, so I think our dyes are done. Let's go ahead and turn this off.
So now what do we do, Val?
We're gonna put them side by side to each other and see just the different mechanism of action in action.
Are we ready to put the swatches in?
Not quite yet. Don't forget oxidative color needs hydrogen peroxide to work. So we're gonna add a 6% hydrogen peroxide solution.
And when you say 6%, what would that mean to a hairdresser?
That's 20 volume.
Perfect.
Are you ready to go with the hair?
I am. Say when.
When? And give it a couple minutes. All right, let's go ahead and take a peek just to show our oil fans. Check that out.
Oh, I already like that shade that you've got going. It's gonna look pretty. You don't leave it on very long.
Just a moment in, it was hardly colored, and now it's pretty intense.
So this makes sense. When I'm using color additive, a lot of times it will look colorless or an interesting shade of yellow, and it's actually just needing that second component of the hydrogen peroxide to actually become what shade I'm choosing.
Exactly. And, you know, again, this is real chemistry. So if you are having a guest process in the chair, if the cream or gel appears really dense, that may necessarily not be anything to be scared of. It's all chemistry. Things oxidize in different ways, but hopefully you can rest assured that if the tube says blue, you're getting a blue end color result on the hair fiber.
Nice. So going back to our previous topics of the hair structure and where those components live in the hair structure, when I'm working with oxidative dye versus direct, where do each of those sit within that hair structure?
So initially when you apply the cream or gel, they're sitting on the outside of the hair and they need to get in. So we rely on the chemistry of the base, which is the cream or the liquid gel hair color, to be able to go into the hair once we get those cuticles to lift and swell. And we use time to allow those molecules to travel inside the hair fiber. The inside of the hair fiber really loves oil, and so you allow the whole cream component to travel in, and it brings the dyes inside with it into the cortex. And when you are finished with the coloring process, you are removing some of the dyes that are left on the surface of the hair, and also anything that didn't assemble and join inside the cortex that is small enough to come back out will come out, and all of the dye molecules that are really large will remain in there. That's mostly true for oxidative color. If we're speaking about direct dyes, some will penetrate into the cortex. Direct dyes have all sorts of different chemistries to them. It's very complex, and it can explain probably why you get a different result on different people. Some direct dyes love to be inside the hair fiber. If you've ever had a guest that has colored their hair blue, you may have forewarned them that they need to be pretty committed to blue, because blue dyes tend to not come out of the hair fiber, and they don't even like to bleach out of the hair fiber. But then reds are not so much wanting to be inside the hair, so they'll wash out very easily because they would rather be in the water than inside the environment of the hair. So it really just depends for direct dyes. A couple of them stick to the outside. Those are few and far in between, and they tend to wash off the most easily, and then you're left with what's inside the hair.
Wow. So I know for me, I'm having a lot of aha moments with some of my formulas, where that's why it's great to extend that processing time for gray coverage. It helps kind of drive that in a little bit more. And I'm sure you guys are all kind of having some moments where you're thinking, oh, that's maybe why that direct dye didn't last as long, or sometimes it has lasted longer. So this is awesome, Val.
Yeah, it just depends on the chemistry. Everyone's unique.
Thank you. So Val, I want to kind of go in a little bit more into, I love the oxidative dye and direct dye conversation that we're having, but from a toning perspective, when I would be working with a lighter haired guest, like maybe I'd pre-lightened to a level 9 or 10, oftentimes I want to give that really beautiful platinum, very cool end result. It would appear very dark sometimes, even though I'm at a level 9 or a level 10. Is there any reason that I should be afraid of those darker tones that they're looking like, but really I'm at a higher level? What would be some advice for me?
Well, I think it's important to keep in mind the tone that you're selecting is very important. So sometimes you may have too dark of a residual tone on the hair because it's not the right tone to be toning with. And we'll go over color theory in some of our later episodes. but also when you're toning, it's just putting like a little light stained glass image over the hair. It's very superficial. How much time do you leave a toner on for?
Generally 2 to 10 minutes, depending on the person.
It's not a lot of time. So again, time is your friend if you want a lot of color to penetrate into the hair. So the less time you have, the less further the dye has gone in, and so the easier it will be for that dye to rinse out. So if it feels like it could be a little too dark, don't worry, it'll probably fade within a short amount of time. It's just a toner, but also you could use it to your advantage, and I'm pretty sure you already do that.
And that makes sense too for with those darker levels that I've pre-lioned, and maybe I'm seeing that residual dominant pigment exposed maybe in those orange tones, unwanted red or kind of gold tones. In those instances, I do leave my toner on for even up to full processing time to make sure I'm getting true neutralization. But definitely with my blondes, I know they don't want to be too dark or over depositive tone, so less is more for that type of guest.
Less is more, and you can always add. It's very hard to take away, so don't forget that. So Jen, I hope that answered all of the questions today that our audience might have about oxidative dyes, direct dyes, the differences, and what kinds of colors they can be found in. If there's any other comments, questions, concerns, or compliments, you can put them in the comments section down below. On the next episode, we're going to go over more bonding stuff, specifically bond builders. Bond builders are so hot right now, and everyone's using them, but they also have a lot of questions about them, so we'll be sure to cover that.
Thanks, Val.
Thanks, Jen.